Okay, so we're going to tackle a really interesting subject. Intelligent design and other deep thoughts. Intelligent design is the theory that life and the universe were created by an intelligent entity, rather than by random chance over billions of years, as per, say, the theory of evolution. Intelligent design suggests that the features of the universe and living organisms are best explained by an intelligent cause, which usually means a deity of some sort. Now, Christianity, through the Bible, tells us that the world reveals the very nature and character of God. This is one of the most profound things you'll find in the Bible. When the Apostle Paul said this, he opened up a new understanding of science. Science ought to lead us to a wonder of God. It ought to lead us to looking at creation and saying, what can creation, this natural world we live in, what can it tell us about the very nature of God? That was his point. Let's look at this verse. Since the creation of the world, God's invisible qualities, his eternal power and divine nature, have been clearly seen, being understood from what has been made, so that men are without excuse. It's very interesting that he should add that part, that men are without excuse, because the theory of evolution has advanced the idea that there is no God. But when you reach the conclusion that there is no God, it has moral repercussions. If there is no God, then you're not responsible for most of what you do. Morality, laws, all of that are happenstance. So atheism and the evolutionary theory have been combined. They're essentially the same thing. But what does creation tell us about the nature of God? The question becomes, is there evidence within the natural world for an intelligent and purposeful creator, which we will then refer to as intelligent design? So let's start by looking at my ceiling fan. All right? This is actually my ceiling fan. This is a parts diagram for the fan. Then there's a parts list, and it has 90 parts. These are just some of those parts. More than 90 parts. It was designed by a mechanical engineer with an electrical engineer working together. So what had to happen was a plan had to be made and a parts list had to be made, and all of the individual parts had to be uniquely, individually designed. Then, after they are designed and the specifications for them are settled, those parts have to go out to individual manufacturers. Nobody makes the whole fan. Somebody makes the blades, somebody makes the motor, somebody makes the couplings, somebody makes the axles, somebody makes the little lovely glass dish and the light bulbs that light up inside of it. So it has to go out to all these different parts manufacturers. And those parts have to be extremely precise in their construction, because when they all come back together and get put back together, they have to fit perfectly. If any one of those parts fails to meet its specification, then the fan's not going to work, or some aspect of that fan is not going to work. Just makes sense, doesn't it? So these specifications are absolutely essential and precise, and the parts are being created by different manufacturers. Are you with me so far? It's a very complex process. The assembly instructions cover 9 pages. The parts must be assembled in the correct order, and this is essential. If you get the order wrong in even one part, that's it for the fan. It doesn't function. So the correct order is essential. Any failure to follow the correct order will terminate the assembly, and that won't be cool. Cool? Ceiling fan? Cool? Good. That's it for humor. That's my humorous moment today. The rest is really, really serious. I know, it couldn't be worse, you guys. It was terrible. My dearest friends are saying that was wonderful, but that wasn't cool. If any part is left out in the assembly process, the fan's not going to work. So I want you to imagine this. You've sent out all these individual parts, they've come back, hopefully they meet the specifications. You take the box that the fan came in, you take out the styrofoam lining, you take out all of that packing material, and you take each one of those parts out of its plastic case, because they all came with little plastic, you know how they do, and you take them all out of those plastic containers, and you have an empty box, and you take all the parts and you drop the parts into the box. Are you with me? Use your imagination. You take all the parts and you drop them in. Oh, and by the way, there's 3 tools you have to assemble this. And those tools are also very fine in their specifications. They have to be just right as well. So you throw all the parts into the box, you throw in the 3 tools, you cover the box, you tape it shut, you pick up the box and you start shaking it. How long will it take you to assemble the fan? Forever isn't enough time. Obviously. It's not going to assemble itself. Don't stop shaking the box until the fan is fully assembled. How long do you think it will take? It's a pointless question. It's impossible. Now, at this point in this little talk, an evolutionary enthusiast should point out, at least if I were one, this is the criticism I would make of myself. I would say, evolution does not posit a mechanical process of creation, but rather a chemical and biological process that lends itself to minute changes over billions of years, hence the theory of evolution. So they would say it's a chemical process, biological process, got nothing to do with mechanics. It's got nothing to do with engineering. And that was the theory, and that was the position. But here's the problem with science, and here's the problem with arriving at theories. A theory is successful and considered true when it explains the known data. But when the data pool increases, and the theory has to be adapted and tweaked and massaged and eventually violated in order to absorb all of the new information that's coming in. When that happens, then science is forced to grow. That's what, by the way, Copernicus and Galileo, that's what happened with their theory of the stars and planets circling the Earth. It became so cumbersome in the explanation that they finally said, look, this is impossible. There's got to be a simpler way to explain this. And Copernicus and Galileo came up with this idea that we circle the sun, not vice versa. Science grows when the data pool increases to where the known theories don't explain it adequately. You with me? So, when Darwin posited the theory of evolution, there was no science pertaining to the simplest functions of the human cell. The problem was, there was no technology capable of revealing how the human cell functions. The technology didn't exist. The best microscope available at the end of the century in which Darwin worked was capable of a magnification of 1,000 times. That sounds pretty good. That sounds pretty good. But that allowed nothing more than viewing the cell, the human cell, as a whole. It gave us no insight into what is going on inside the cell. It would be like taking a picture of a house, and the photograph is accurate of the external walls of the house, but you don't know what's going on inside the house, and what's going on inside the house is the main issue. Well, fortunately, this all changed with the invention of the electron microscope. And that's where everything changes, pretty much instantaneously. Today's electron microscope has a magnification factor of 10 million times. It is 10,000 times more magnification than the best microscope available in Darwin's time. So the question is, what would it mean to our discussion of intelligent design if the human cell actually operated like a machine? like evidently engineered, like that it's a mechanical device and not just a bunch of chemicals bumping into each other. Are you with me? What difference would it make if we had evidence that the human cell and our bodies work in an engineered fashion? It would change everything because it would be evidence that there's a designer to this. You don't get this degree of complexity by accident. Are you with me? So, let's look at creation. And let's just ask ourselves some questions about one simple little organism. Ladies and gentlemen, I introduce to you your best friend, the flagellum. Why is this little character so important? Because this little character is the propulsion system for the sperm cell that fought its way against thousands of others to find the egg, to fertilize the egg, to make the person that is you. You owe your life to that. Shall we all just give thanks? Thank the little rascal. Oh, and by the way, one more moment of humor. The flagellum is the motor that runs the propeller that drives the sperm all the way up to finally join the egg. And the question is, why in the creation of a human being does it take thousands and thousands of sperm cells and only one egg? Why thousands of male sperm cells and only one egg? Because not one of those sperm cells is willing to stop and ask for directions. That was my moment. I'd like to close with the offering. Here's the deal with the flagellum, guys. This is really, really cool. It's composed of all, just like the ceiling fan, it's composed of all these finely, very precise parts that have to fit together. It has a motor. And this is what's interesting. When I researched this, I didn't say, AI, please give me the Christian version of a flagellum. I didn't stack the deck. I said, I just need an image. I need a diagram of the construction of a flagellum. And this is what came up. And in all the literature, listen to this, in all the literature I looked at, the scientific explanations, they all referred to it as a motor. Hello? That's science telling us that's a motor. It functions as a motor. It has an axle. It has a number of rings. It has the hook. And we're going to look at the flagella, which is the actual propeller that this thing drives. It runs on adenosine triphosphate. It's the molecule in the human body that transfers energy from one part of the human body to another. It's the most fascinating thing. It's this molecule that is delivered throughout the human body, and when it gets there and it breaks down, it releases energy. Isn't that the coolest thing? So this little motor has an energy source. It's a machine. It must be assembled in a precise order. Leave one part out, it won't work. And it has to be assembled in the right order. Even the filament, the whip-like filament that is effectively the propeller, even it is complex in its construction. Let's look at electron microscopy. There is the function of the flagella, the whip-like structure that beats against the liquid and propels the sperm cell forward. Look at the cross-section. The basal body structure near the bottom is different than the flagella itself. This is one sophisticated motor. What's the chances that this could that all these separate parts can be individually created and then brought together and then assembled in the perfect order to end up with a functioning machine? What's the chances that that can happen by random chance? It is literally impossible. It can't be done, because what science is now showing us is that creation is far more designed than we thought it was, and far more sophisticated than we thought it was, and tremendously complex. And I don't have time to go into this, but I have a science background, and I took a bunch of genetics, and we studied DNA and RNA and all of that. Inside the human cell, it more resembles a factory than anything else. Materials are being delivered to the cell. They are being moved across through the cell by the transfer RNA. Complex molecules are brought over to the DNA. It fits those molecules to be constructed into various positions along the double helix that is the DNA. And then when it's finished doing that, it peels it off as a completed structure and carries it to another portion of the cell and plugs it into another mechanism. It is a factory that runs on energy, and it works entirely by design. And it's utterly sophisticated. And there are numerous organs in the human body which are far more complex than the flagellum. The human eye, for instance, is ridiculously complex. The system of simply seeing goes through so many processes before that image is created in the mind. It is wondrous. And that's the whole point. It's wondrous. And what it does, when we appreciate it and see it, it causes us to fall down and worship an intellect so incredibly intelligent, so beyond our comprehension. And that entity has chosen, for some bizarre, only he knows why reason, to love us. Now we're going to end with a completely different line of science. We're going to go to quantum mechanics. And this is really, really interesting. The Bible tells us this wild thing about God. He's omnipresent. He's everywhere at once, all at once. Everywhere at once, all at once. Theological term is omnipresence. And listen to what Paul said about Jesus. He is the image of the invisible God. He is the firstborn over all things that were created. By him all things were created, things in heaven and on earth, visible and invisible, whether thrones or powers or rulers or authorities, all things were created by him and for him. He is before all things, and here's the point, and in him all things hold together. Something is holding creation together. It has ruled out the random and has created a predictable machine that runs perfectly, but something holds it all together. Something is everywhere at once, all at once. A few more biblical references to this concept. God speaking through his prophet, "Am I only a God nearby? Am I not a God far away? Can anyone hide in secret places so I can't see him? Declares the Lord. Do I not fill heaven and earth? Do I not fill heaven and earth? Do I not hold all things together?" So the question becomes, is there evidence for something that is in contact with all of creation, everywhere, all at once, all at the same time, something that holds all things together? Do we have evidence for that in creation? And the theory is called entanglement. And it applies particularly to subatomic particles. Einstein, the world's smartest guy, posited this theory before there was any technological. Remember I talked about how science develops? There's an idea, but you don't have a technology to figure it out. But when the technology comes, you're going to find out whether you were right or wrong. And it's going to indicate a whole lot more than just that question. It's going to raise other questions and give us new lines of investigation. Einstein posited a theory of entanglement, which is, let me read it to you. Oh, this is so cool. He named it spooky action at a distance. And it became the byword for his theory of entanglement. And let me tell you what quantum entanglement is. A phenomena wherein two particles become linked so that the state of one instantly influences the state of the other, no matter how far apart they are. It's a connective idea that two things can be connected over time and space where it's impossible for that to happen. And it defies classical physics, which assumes that information cannot travel faster than the speed of light. Are you with me? Okay. We all know what a photon is. It's what comes out of the USS Enterprise. They're photon torpedoes. Actually, it is a particle. I find this kind of theological. It is a particle of light. See, light is interesting. It travels as a wave, but it also travels as a particle. Sometimes it behaves like a wave, like sound, and other times it behaves like a particle, like something's moving through space. So a photon is a unit of light. It's this tiny little bit of light. And Einstein posited that if it were possible to split this thing in two, they would somehow stay connected. Well, it took some time before we had the technology to try this out, but now we do. And let me find the laboratories. Los Alamos Laboratory here and the University of Innsbruck in Austria figured out how to split a photon into two little photons. You need a particle accelerator. And so they did it. So you get this little particle traveling this huge, long loop, and you accelerate it to the speed, approaching the speed of light, very close to the speed of light, which is the boundary, the outer boundary of speed of transmission of anything in the universe. You can't go faster than the speed of light. You can't go faster than the speed of light. It's a rule. It's a law. This is it. You with me? So they get this little guy going around and around and around. They hit approaching very close to light speed, and they have a way to crack it into two. When they cracked it into two, they sent one down this way on a fiber optic line, many miles, and one down this way. So they're moving in opposite directions, broken in half, spinning both of them, separating at each of them approaching light speed, which means their relative separation speed is what? Pretty close to 2 times light speed, which means there is no possible way that either one could influence the other as they are separating approaching light speed. They had the ability to pass the little guy going this way across a force field. I can't explain it, it's too complicated. But what it does is reversed his spin. This little guy's spin, they pass it by this energy source, and the spin just goes from clockwise to counterclockwise. At the very same time, this little guy over here is being looked at as he passes that point, and no force is applied to him whatsoever, and his spin reverses at exactly the same time that his spin reversed. This is spooky action at a distance. How do you possibly explain connectedness across time and space where it is not possible to go faster than the speed of light, but something is communicating between these two things? And The result of quantum physics and the result of this has caused a vast number of astrophysicists and quantum mechanics physicists to become theists. Because how else do you explain this unifying thing that is in contact with absolutely everything all the time, everywhere? We got a minute, so this is worth doing. This is my birth. This is my death. This tabletop is time and space, the world that we live in. And I'm right, sadly, that's my birth and this is my death, and I'm about right there. Running out of time in space. Yeah, and these are people watching me. This is you people, you little busybodies. Go mind your own business. Now, this is time and space. This is the dimension we live in. It's concrete, and it's predictable, and we move through time and space up to where we are right now. Where's God? He's above it. And he's watching it. He's watching it. Every moment of my life is present to him right now. Every moment. Now here's the magic. I just find this so wonderful. We do a lot of inner healing. We deal with brokenness from the past. Catch this. We're busy praying for God to help them, and he's reaching down. I had a tragic incident when I was 12. My mother attempted suicide. I found her. That's truth. And there was certain repercussions that came out of that influenced who I am today. God has the ability to reach down because he's outside of time and space. And he can reach down and he can heal that moment and he can break the bonds of connectedness between that moment and who I am today. And he can do it. He can do it anytime he wants to because there is no time. Not where he lives. And someday, we're all going to be gathered up. No time. Eternity. The present moment of the perfect presence of God. That's what we're waiting for. So, these large-brained individuals that study what happens outside of time and space, the connectedness of all things. A lot of them are Christians. And a lot of them are theists. Here's some of them. Werner Heisenberg, the Heisenberg uncertainty principle was groundbreaking in astrophysics and quantum mechanics. Max Planck, Albert Einstein, Arthur Holly Compton, Michael Faraday, the Faraday cage, and more. Right now, a survey was done of members of the American Association for the Advancement of Science. These are major players. Conducted by the Pew Research Center. 2009, 51% believe in God or a higher power. And this is in the face of the theory of evolution, which is being taught in our schools as an absolute fact. And some teachers lost their jobs because they merely suggested discussing intelligent design. Didn't propose it, just said, there's something here we should be talking about. This is important. Evolution is a theory that's lost its usefulness. It has failed to live up to the advancement of science, its own claims to be scientific, but when it is stacked up against the latest technology and what we know, it's not fitting, it's not working. Which leaves us in the awkward position of maybe having to admit that there's a God, and maybe if we have to admit that there's a God, maybe it has moral repercussions. Maybe there's a moral universe which is governed by its own laws as the physical universe is governed by our laws. Maybe there is a moral universe. Maybe the only logical conclusion to all of this is bowing down and worshiping. And doesn't that bring us face to face with ourselves? The more you know, the more you become responsible. So it's not this message that's important, it's what you do with this message that's important. Because increased knowledge equals increased responsibility. That's it. We got some questions, comments?
Okay, let's do it this way.
We have time.
Okay, yeah, no, good. But if you're gonna open it up, then that's on you. All right. So, all right. Let me ask you a question. Didn't Darwin say that if? Yeah. No. I got my microphone right here. I'm running this thing. Okay.
Kyle, stop it. You had your chance in the announcements. Just leave this alone.
Didn't Darwin say that if the cell could ever be looked inside the cell, and if it was complex, it was irreducible complexity. He said, if we could ever look inside the cell and see that it's complex, my theory falls apart. Like, it was his quote.
I think so, but the one that
I actually know so, but go ahead.
Okay, well, I haven't read that, but I have read his comment about intermediaries in the evolutionary theory. And he said, the greatest criticism that can be brought against my theory to date is the lack of intermediaries in the evolutionary progression. When, minute change over billions of years, you should have millions and millions of intermediaries indicating a process of change. There aren't any.
So at the Museum of Man down at Balboa Park, and they show the progression?
No, it's not there. That's theoretical. It's not there.
They look pretty real.
I mean, it's a theory that this is the way it went. But the fossil record, which is the ultimate proof here, doesn't contain the intermediaries, and that's the problem. And he said it himself. He said, I've got the quote, I can bring it next Sunday, but he said essentially, this is the strongest criticism that can be brought against my theory, basically he was saying, and I cannot understand why we don't find these intermediaries in the archaeological digs that we do. And they're not there. That's the problem. To such a degree that the evolutionists now have a new doctrine which they call sudden occurrence. In other words, that old thing didn't work. So we are recognizing the fact that species came into existence pretty much independently of other species. And it happened very suddenly. So they call it sudden occurrence. And when faced with how this could possibly be that life could develop here on Earth in this accidental function, given what they noticed in sudden occurrence, many of them posited extraterrestrials who seeded our galaxy. If that's how far away from science you have to go to make a case, you've gone a long way away from science.
Okay, you're up.
So I have 2 questions. So we talked about how light is a particle and a wave. What is the particle, I guess you could say accelerator? How did the light be divided against itself? What caused that?
What caused the splitting?
Yes, sir.
I have no idea.
Okay.
But you can look it up, and you'll get, but guys, it gets so complicated so fast. You got to know their language before you can understand it. But suffice it to say, when they explained it, they didn't. For the layman, they didn't go into all the science of how you split the particle, but that they split the particle is a given. They
Second
did.
question.
So what is that force field that changed the direction of the particle?
You need to sit down and go somewhere else. You know what? I started to read it, and it's like, okay, I admit I don't know how they did it, but they did it. That was the technology that didn't exist. So,
And to that,
but you can look it up. Say, go to spooky action at a distance or entanglement, and then take AI and keep asking it questions about how did they apply the force and not just how did they apply the force that changed this guy's spin, but how did they measure this guy's spin as it passed by the measuring device.
and the fact that these things, if evolution was true, it would be so basic. It's so complicated. That's the point of the ceiling fan. It's so complicated and complex. For us to say this building just came together because the wind blew through Escondido, everybody said, well, that's stupid. But we think that our eyeballs and our bodies and the universes did. It's just illogical. Okay, somebody else, question. Mark's going to do this open thing, and we're going to see how this goes.
Yeah, well, you can.
Is this like?
I know that's where
are you guys
the real
going to get
problem
Are you guys going to get the cane with a hook out soon and just yank him up? Is this the music? We're going to go for a few minutes, so just enjoy yourselves back there. We're going to go for a few minutes. All right, somebody else,
Yeah.
a question for Mark.
Well,
Oh, you?
yeah, Kyle's brought up. Guys, the real argument here isn't about intelligent design. The real argument here is the biochemistry of creating a complex protein, which are there's 4 complex proteins which are the components of DNA. And they're incredibly complicated in and of themselves before you even put them together in the double helix. And the chances of random chance assembling one of those, even one of those complex proteins, mathematically it's such a remote number that here's how they came up with it. It is the likelihood of this. Take the state of Texas, cover it 2 feet deep in silver dollars. Take one of those silver dollars and put an X on it. Then take a blind man out in a car and drive him wherever he wants to go and let him out of the car, and he gets one choice to find the silver dollar in the state of Texas buried 2 feet deep. One chance. The likelihood of him finding that is the likelihood of one of these organic proteins assembling itself through random chance. It doesn't exist. It is an absolute mathematical impossibility.
Another question. This is your chance. You've intimidated everybody. Here we go, back here. Okay, we need a microphone over here. There goes Jerry.
Maybe this should be like the topic of a completely different sermon, but this is like an argument for a theist, but not a Christian.
Absolutely correct.
So
You nailed it.
is there going to be a time when we can go into why we are like to think that there is a God, but the God has spoken,
Yeah.
and he has spoken through Jesus?
Absolutely. In fact, you are 1 week ahead of that. Here, 2 weeks ahead. We're going to do the historicity of Jesus, the historic references. Is it viable to believe in his truth, in his life and death, and even resurrection? We're going to go there. We're going to go through the veracity of the Bible. Is this a document that stands alone? Is it credible? And we're going to look at some more evolutionary stuff, and we're just going to keep hitting these questions. But you're absolutely right. Just because you're a theist doesn't mean you're a Christian. But being a theist implies moral responsibility. And then how we deal with the question of moral irresponsibility and how we solve the sin. Look, very quickly, make this fast. The Bible is a document principally about three things: the nature of God, the nature of man, the problem that that creates, I'm going to go to 4, and the solution to that problem. Right? So once you become a theist, you have to face the fact it has moral implications for your life. And then that investigation of what you do about those moral implications becomes, what kind of God would this be? Is he a personal God or an impersonal God? Does he have requirements from us as individuals? Should he be worshipped? Well, look at creation. He should be worshipped, clearly. He's too wonderful not to. That gets us to the Christian question of, what about sin? And how does that get taken care of? And then you're into all world religions, and then you have to narrow it down from there as to which one best explains the solution to sin. But that's easy. Christianity is the only world religion with the concept of grace. The only one. All the others are religions about rituals and rules and performance. And Christianity is not about performance, it's about his gift to you on the cross. That you didn't deserve it, but you got it anyway. And what kind of life does that lead to? Okay.
Awesome.
I have a comment. Just one comment. I just have one comment about the connectedness of the two photons that took off the other direction. And the earth is filled with his glory. So the glory of God, to me, is what connects. The earth is filled with his glory, right?
Yeah.
So the glory of God, to me, is the answer to that.
That's good, Jared. Can we thank Mark, everybody? That was great.
Amen.